Hey, everybody, this is Perch, and I do promise I get good. I need to answer my mail and go into that stuff because I always get really good questions and good things to talk about, and then I don't have to think as much, which is awesome. You guys just ask me questions and I answer them, and it makes these videos easy. I can just crank them out. But here's a question I got, and it's a good one, and it goes along with kind of the dialogue around taking critique or taking criticism or any of the rest, and it's basically, here's the question. It goes, who do you complain to at these comic companies? I know back in the day you would have fan mail they would read. I always wonder if you could contact the right person in charge and tell them calmly and logically about all the problems with their products if there would be major change. I could be wrong, but I feel that the higher ups at these companies don't know a lot about how bad these comics are nowadays. And if somebody like a CEO with power to do something could know these issues and how bad things are, they could easily fix them, and that they would be the one to fix them. Um, it's a good question, and it's a sad answer. It's a little bit defeating. So first off, I absolutely think that a lot of the higher ups, the people at these comic companies, are disconnected from what's going on inside their companies. And I say that because, well, I say that because they say that. It's fairly common that you can, if you listen to Joe Quesada on his drink and draw stuff that he does, or whatever it is, whatever that show that he's done, if you listen to his interview with Didio, if you look at comments made by some of the editors, it's the little things that stand out to me. It's when an editor says something like, "Hey, I'm really looking forward to catching up on some comics today," or maybe case in point. CB Cebulski did a tweet that he got panned for, by the way, pretty bad, some time ago, where he said, I've got a bunch of comics that I'm finally going to catch up with over the holidays. And he listed a bunch of the comics, and some of them have been printed like 6 months ago, by his own company. And you look at that and you're like, I don't know. I mean, if you were working in this company and your job was like editor in chief, or don't you think you would be reading your company's comics like before they came out? I mean, I just, like, how many people listening to this right now would be like fighting to read the comics before they went to print, or at the very least before they showed up in shops? You'd want to know, right? I mean, it seems weird to me that you don't. Now, I understand life gets busy and everything else, but still, at the same time, it's a little bit like an executive at Toyota who drives a BMW and actually doesn't own any Toyota cars. Like, wouldn't that'd be weird, right? I think it would be weird. Now, if you're, head of Toyota, you probably are driving a Bentley around, but still, all the same, I think it would send a very strange message inside your company and outside of it if you weren't sampling your own products, if you weren't, heavily immersed in what you produced. So the challenge is look, it's a safe bet that people like Joe Quesada, because he's the thing is, he said it himself. This isn't me guessing. He's made many comments around the fact that he is not reading the comics his company produces, and certainly not on a regular basis. He'll catch up with things. Somebody will say, "Hey, this is a really cool issue. You got to read this," but the guy's not reading all this stuff. I can't recall whether Tom Brevoort has ever said something one way or another, but I want to believe that I've read things by Tom Brevoort that suggest that he's not reading all the comics that the company's producing. And I think he should. I think I think he has to do his job effectively. So to the original question, who do you complain to? Are the CEOs, the managers of these places even aware? And again, the answer is no. And we're not even that high up the chain. Right now, Kevin Feige runs, basically is in charge of Marvel, their publishing division, their comics. He was put in charge, some time ago. And do you believe he's reading all the comics? There's no way he's reading all these comics. I would be surprised if he's reading any of the comics. And that's not terribly unusual when you get high enough up the chain for people not to be reading all this stuff. But I know that in the movie industry, it was a source of pride for a lot of the execs and the CEOs and the higher ups. They watched the movie. There's very famous screening rooms in LA that are posh, and they're intended for that purpose. I've been to two movies this way, both invites, and I got to go onto the Paramount lot and I got to go, into the special screening room, and it was super kick-ass and awesome, and I felt like a super champ, and I got to watch that movie, and I'm surrounded by other people I didn't really know, but there was one guy in the back that was one of the C-level executives in the company, and everybody's like, "Whoa, he's here," and it was just these things happen. So that doesn't seem to happen in comics. And then beyond that, it is 100% certain that a lot of the executives and the senior ups do not know the kind of crazy shenanigans that go on Twitter with a lot of their creative team. And in some cases, it's for self-preservation reading. Remember, a lot of the creators who are on Twitter or Facebook or wherever it happens to be, they're not employees. They're independent contractors. They're freelancers. They have a job, just as long as the company wants to keep giving them a job. They're trusting that the staff editors are picking the right people for these books. But they don't have a relationship in most cases with the freelancers. They largely don't even know they exist. If you pinned Kevin Feige down and you said, name 20 of the freelancers working on your books, could he do it? If you said, name one colorist working on anything, he probably couldn't do it. Does this mean Kevin Feige's bad? No, it just means he's very abstracted from the business. And so, if you went to him and said, hey, a bunch of people online for your company are, crazy, are saying crazy things, who would your complaints are going to fall largely on deaf ears, because these executives don't even know these people exist in the first place. Like if you're a DC and you go, hey, did you know Robbie Rodriguez gets up to some pretty crazy shenanigans on the old Twitters? The answer is going to be, Robbie who? They don't even know. So you have to go fairly far down the chain before people even know who that is. And by the time you get there, it's questionable whether that person has the authority to really turn things around or change anything. And more likely than not, the person, was probably the man or the woman who put Robbie in that position in the first place. So they're not going to go, oh, hey, I'm going to listen to your online complaints and do something about it. They're going to ignore you because they made that decision to get him in the company, again, in the first place. So that's the problem. So is there a place you could go to say, hey, things are off track, things are wrong? Probably not. There isn't, I guess if you were, trapped for some reason on a deserted island with Kevin Feige and you could just bend his ear for several days while you scavenged for food, maybe you could communicate some things about his business that he'd want to know and he'd take to heart and he'd come back and try and make some corrections. It's possible, but probably unlikely. And you're not going to get trapped on a desert island with Kevin. That whole you're not going to cast away with Kevin. It's the challenges are, unfortunately, the idea of being able to go to the person in charge. Like if you eat at a restaurant and you have a bad experience, you say, I'd like to talk to the manager, and you say, hey, there was some insects in my food, and I didn't order that, and it's gross. That manager has the ability and the scope to fix your problem. In comic books, that person, that entity probably doesn't exist. And you might have some great solutions, but that person is also so abstracted from the business, they would not even know what to do with your solutions if you offered it to them. None of what I'm saying is very cheerful, but that's kind of the reality of where you're at in the business, of where things are going. I think that there's a couple exceptions to this. Possibly, I think if you could have the kind of relationship with, say, Jim Lee, where you were able, because he was in this industry, he worked his way up from this industry, and now he has an executive position within DC. If you could get to Jim Lee and say, hey, things are really off track. Here's where they're off track. Look, this is where you're killing yourself. You'd have to make a very compelling argument. And I think you'd have to be somebody Jim Lee trusted and was already in his network to get his attention. Then, that's probably one of those cases. I don't think that person exists over at Marvel. I think, it's unlikely that person exists there. So, unfortunately, this is where a lot of corporations go. And so the only real, tool you have at your disposal is your wallet. If you're disturbed by things, don't buy them. And eventually sales numbers do catch up. It will definitely take longer than you think and that you hope, but eventually sales, poor performance, that kind of stuff, it does have an impact. Unfortunately, you don't control the outcome. If sales get really, really bad at a company, a number of different things could happen. They could cut the entire line and stop producing comics. That's probably not what you were after. You were just after comics, you were after some improvements in comics. You weren't after getting the whole thing shut down. And so you're taking a risk that that's the outcome. But it's a goofy place. This is kind of one of the problems when you get these big megacorps that own subsidiaries that are not their core competency. It becomes very difficult to actually enact meaningful change. And that's kind of the sad answer. I wanted a better answer for your question, but there's the sad answer from my perspective at least. But what do you think? Maybe you, the listener, you have a better idea. You know how to get through to some people. Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe. Follow me on social media. Send me questions and I will answer them here, which is awesome. But most importantly, thanks for listening.